I want to thank you all for taking time out. I know these Saturdays can be grueling, but we're going to push through this. We promise we won't waste your time. You don't have to stay on camera the full time, but please be active in the chat. The group has planned an awesome session for us, and we'll get you guys right out of here. So a little bit, I sent you all information about who they are. They have a combined experience. All four of these young adults have 50 years experience between them, empowering marginalized communities to access civic engagement and collective action in ways that are authentic and inclusive of the entire community. Sounds familiar, huh? They specialize in a cohort design, which is what they're doing here with us, and development, capacity building, coaching, training on issues related to equity and social justice, collective engagement, and a radical professionalism. So I can't wait to hear more about that and what they're going to do. I want to introduce to some and reconnect for others, Miss Kimberly Williams, Dana.
It's Donna A. One word,
Donna A. Donna A. Tapia.
Yes.
Donna A. Tapia. Okay, I got it. Thank you, Donna. And Claudia Howard and Mr. Daniel Johnson. Welcome, welcome. I'll pass the mic to you.
Thank you, everyone. Good morning. And yes, my name is Donna A. One word. Easiest way is just like pretend it's Donna and then there's an A at the end. So yeah, I will be starting us off first. Before we get started, we like to name accessibility needs. So what do you need in order to be fully present? And the reason why we start off this way is to make sure that we are all included and we're all just naming, like, I got kids, you might hear some background noise. I just want to let you know that when I unmute, there might just be some background noise, right? Or it could just be like, look, I'm preparing some food right now. I have the camera off, but then I'll turn it on in a bit, right? And so just naming like what you're doing, because we're all working from home, right? Or like maybe we're doing some errands too, which is legit, right? And so I wanted to offer space first to name our access needs and also our virtual needs, or even like naming some tech issues. So sometimes the virtual sphere is not nice to us. We're like cutting off, there's lag. I may sound like a robot. So if you also want to name that, this is the time to do it, okay? Okay. Okay. So if there's nothing in the chat, you could also name it in the chat as well. Then, we will commit throughout the day. If you are struggling with tech, just let us know in the chat. Again, if you need to name, like, I need to take a quick bio break, right? Just name it in the chat, and that's also naming your accessibilities. And then I want to acknowledge the community agreements that you all have created and have. So just wanted to name it and remember, have that centered, right, as we continue our conversations today. And thank you. And I'm going to pass it over to Kim.
Thanks, Donna A. Oh, Daniel, you have a question?
Not necessarily a question. I just wanted to share that I am in a shared space. It is early in the morning in this shared space, so at times I might not unmute myself, but utilize the chat more.
Thank you. Okay. So welcome, everybody. We are the Radical Professionals. Cheryl gave us a great intro. We appreciate that. We'll give you a little bit about ourselves individually over the course of the series so that you know a little bit about who we are. I'll start with myself. My name is Kimberly Williams, pronoun she, her, they, them. I am a Los Angeles transplant by way of Philadelphia, but my family has lived here and done work in the community for over 35 years. So I was a movement baby, and because of that, I was able to have the privilege of lived firsthand apprenticeship through all of my family and all of their organizations, which helped me build skills that I'm now able to use at the director level today. So I'm really pleased to be with you all, and I'm looking forward to getting to know more about you all as leaders as we continue this work. Okay. So, as Cheryl said, this is a 4-part series, right? We're at session 1, rules of engagement. We're going to make sure that we have an opportunity to ground ourselves in some shared language, right? We understand we're talking to leaders who have different varying degrees of like expertise around communication in groups, but we want to be mindful of making sure that we establish some shared language to help you all get to better results, okay? So each session, we're gonna ground ourselves in 4 grounding assumptions, right? And this is important because we need everyone to be mindful of engaging each other from this context, right? First, we're gonna assume everybody here is a brilliant leader who's committed to positive community change, or you wouldn't be here on a Saturday, right? We also wanna be mindful of unlearning with each other, right? Or like challenging ourselves to learn different ways to be better in community with results in mind, right? So what is our result? To come together as a community, regardless of differences in experiences, to be able to achieve a collective community result. So anything that we do in this space is with that in mind, okay? Third, everyone here is committed to being an ally, right? An ally is somebody who's willing to educate themselves about oppression, listen to the very people most marginalized by oppression, also learn from listening, examine and challenge your own prejudice, beliefs, stereotypes, and assumptions, work through all your feelings about it, right? To identify the root of what needs to be responded to and heal. Practice challenging oppressive beliefs, attitudes, behaviors, policies, and systems, which is exactly what this group is intending to do. And then act collectively with those marginalized folks to make sure that they move toward equity and results, okay? Our last grounding assumption, which is important, right? Multiple truths exist at the same time, right? And it's important that we hear all of those truths. So while you may be speaking your truth at 11, somebody else is speaking a truth at 5. And it don't make the way the dial is spinning on the clock any different. It's just where we at on the clock, okay? Are there any questions about our grounding principles? Okay. Not. Each week, we're going to offer a grounding tool or framework that will be helpful in moving you all along. Today, I'm going to give the floor to Donna A., who is going to discuss the history and the purpose of the medicine wheel. Thank you, Donna.
Thank you, Kim. All right, so some of you may have seen or have heard of the medicine wheel. This is typically a Lakota spiritual, just like a spiritual framework, right? And so I wanted to ground us in this way because learning from your group, right? You all are an intergenerational group, and sometimes that may feel like a challenge, but I wanted to remind us that it's the balance of life, right? And so in this medicine wheel, right, you have the picture on the left and just a brief description, right, where it says the medicine wheel is basically reminds us, right, that everything is connected, everything is a balance, and everything comes in cycles. So real quick, I'm going to break down some of the images that you see within this whole medicine wheel. And so the center, right, is a drum, the heartbeat of Mother Earth, giving us her blessed vibration of healing. It it also has a spiral, right? And this is what we consider a sacred spiral, which represents a sacred journey. All of our journey is sacred, and we have to view each other as sacred beings, right? Mother's Earth heartbeat is surrounded with life, and this is where you see they look like petals, but they're also sun rays. Oh, I think someone is not muted, or maybe asking a question. Sorry.
I think we got it, partners.
Okay, no worries. No, I just wanted to make sure it wasn't a question that I was missing. Thank you. Okay, so I'll continue. So again, I'm on the what looks like petals, but they're also sun rays, right? This is like the representation of life and growth in every form, right? And so beyond the medicine wheel, right, I want to name the colors. White is for the north, the direction of our elders, the winter and the wind. Yellow is for the east, the direction of our children, the spring and fire. Red is for the south, the direction of our youth, summer and earth. And black is the direction of the west. It's the direction of our parents, the fall and water, right? And so one of the first things that was taught to me by my elders, right, about this medicine wheel is that the elders and young people are always in mirror. They're always like facing each other, basically, right? And so this reminds me of why intergenerational work is so important, right? And that we must treat each other in that way, and we learn from each other, right? And so I wanted to name that in this space, right? Because sometimes the intergenerational work comes with challenges. Also, you know, those of us who are new to technology is moving so fast, right? And so sometimes it may feel like, I don't understand this Zoom function or whatever it is, right? And so we're all trying to catch up. But obviously, for those of us who grew up maybe with technology always around us, right? Maybe we're better acclimated, or we could better like use, right, what's in front of us, right? So this is just a reminder that each one teach one, right? Be patient with each other, right? Because we're both learning from each other, okay? And the last things I'll say is that, yes, there's 2 eagle feathers that are surrounding the medicine wheel. And in this, I want to offer one symbolic eagle feather to you all, and the other eagle feather to the communities that you all work with, right? The feather is a special gift, right? And it's usually given when someone performs a special act of love or honor. And for you all being here, that is an act of love and honor. And for you all doing the work, that's also an act of love and honor. And then finally, you see trees, right? Roots above and below, because that's the representation of what happens here also happens in the universe. We're all connected, right? And so, yeah, I just wanted to, again, ground us in this way, because we all come with power, right? Our own individual power. So what does it mean to share our power, our roles, and our leadership? How do we honor each other in the process and leave room for possibilities? So thank you.
Thank you, Donna A.
Cool. So I'm going to share screen now. We're going to move to our introduction to communication. So just give me a minute while I get this going. Okay. Can you all see this?
Yes, yes.
Full screen now?
Yes.
Okay. All right, perfect. Thank you. And I'll pass it over to Kim.
Okay. Thank you, Donna A. So like we said, we are working with like varying degrees of expertise and experience in the room, but the purpose of this is to ground ourselves in a shared understanding so that we can move toward results in a more effective way. So we are either going to introduce or refresh some principles around communication for the group today so that we can be mindful of using them in service to results. Next slide, please. So communication. Communication is simply the act of transferring information from one place to another. It shows up and put in ways that can be verbal, nonverbal, written, and a visualization, right? Two major parts of communication, talking and listening, right? First, we're gonna look at using I statements for effective communication. Next slide, please. So what are these I statements that we're talking about, right? When you're angry, frustrated, hurt, or fearful, right? Like you want to communicate as authentically as possible, right? And given our different degrees of access to information about communities, like communication strategies, right? Like our first mind might not be the most effective in terms of getting to results, right? So using I statements can help you express your feelings in a manner that will not provoke a negative response to your listener. Okay, next slide, please. So appropriate assertiveness. With appropriate assertiveness, you want to be able to state your case without arousing the defenses of other people, right? The success for this lies in how it is for you rather than what they shouldn't do, right? So like instead of saying you're wrong or this is a problematic behavior, right? Ground it in your own experience, okay? You don't address the behavior or make assertions about a person or people, right? And this is important because oftentimes, like we said with the clock, you may be looking at it and it makes perfect sense from your perspective, right? But if you haven't taken the opportunity to clarify it, right, or ask about your observation and your experience from the other side of the clock, we might be getting the time wrong altogether, okay? Next slide, please. So more about I statements. Again, they allow you to speak from your own experience. They're non-threatening. They allow you to take responsibility, okay, for your own feelings and that of the listener. It removes accusing or blaming so that like those triggers that often happen that the result in breakdown of communication are diffused, right? I statements are an effective form of communication because they maintain a respectful attitude toward the receiver and place the responsibility for change in that person. Okay. Next slide, please. So we're going to talk a little bit about emotional intelligence again, and is the measure of a person or individual's ability to recognize and manage their emotions, right? Even the emotions of other people, right? So I know I have a lot of organizers in the room and they understand that being mindful of managing the energy and the tone and the emotions of people can definitely achieve sharper results. So we're lifting that up today as a shared understanding framework that we want folks to be mindful of. Next slide, please. Any questions?
Yes, I'd like to ask the group, based on what you've heard so far, you know, the framing and our beginning conversation around communication, what you all might be hoping to learn or practice in our time together today, and what questions you might want to get answered at this point. And we like to prioritize the chat, so the questions are also in the chat. But if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself and share some of that reflection, we welcome that too.
Well, I think I'd like to share. I have a few questions. See if I can.
Please.
So For the last 7 years, been working on trying to help and house dudes is reflective, especially for me. I can say a lot of times I speak on emotion. And when we are trying to present projects to our local governance that's not responding, that brings up certain emotions where you don't normally act like that. And so I feel that the attack on especially Black women who are trying to do something as a small business or a nonprofit in South LA has been very derogatory. And I want to be transparent about that. If the resources surrounding and there's no support, and people like Everett Sands, who is denying $40,000 to a nonprofit to house the homeless, and no one is saying something about that, that actually reflects on the clients that she served, which is the youth and the homeless. They denied services or not giving housing. Black people are used through LASA and other organizations for data and funding, but the services are not given. And so those who are in the ground floor, and anybody who knows me and speak about me a lot, they know that I do speak up quite a bit. I'm pretty loud, but it's not on purpose. It's because there is a clear message and nobody's really leading me as to where is the solution for homelessness. And so when this is $1 billion issue and LA is the homeless capital of the world, and you have the same people in charge and are discriminatory, we can't be hypocritical about that. The problem is poor leadership. And if we give the young people, and especially, I can only speak as a Black woman, there is no support at all with the history of America for the Black woman. And I realize that right now in my 40s. And so for me to help others heal while I don't have anyone to help me heal, that is our story quite often. And that has to be spoken a lot. I'm tired of seeing images of us twerking and being ratchet and no respect and baby mama drama. All this stuff, is what's in the mass media and affects our youth. And so if we have opportunities to change that and we don't bring our resources now together based on clicks and stuff like that, nothing gets done. So I say this to say, I requested at the last meeting for the property of real estate of the empty lots in my area. I live in West Athens off Imperial in Vermont. And there's a homeless encampment that we had there for 3 years that had at least 40 Black people that were in the chronic homeless cycle that was in that lot. And so they were bulldozed over. And I wanted to share that with the CAP meetings. And I felt a disconnect when I'm reaching out to people. I'm saying, who is the owner of this lot? Something simple like that. I say, oh, look on the LA County website. Oh, look at that. The thing is, it's not easy because these properties are being scrubbed. They're being misled. They're being outsourced to, LLCs outside the state. I can go on and on, but the thing is, we are not supporting the residents of West Athens that I can personally say for us to prosper in a way where it's going to be conducive to the youth. So after this series, even after this call, can I get an answer? I reached out to Keith Baker. He tells me, call Cheryl. Cheryl says, call Keith, and I'm not trying to throw shade. I'm just saying this is the type of transparency I want to express, because it's very hurtful that we have a multi-million-dollar project that's all inclusive. And if I tell you the last 7 years how that's been opposite, how our own children have been disrespected. Children are born and raised here. And these youth organizations are not coming together, and this is where it has to stop. So I want clarity on who's leading the fight for construction and how we can obtain these properties. In the proposals that was submitted to everyone, there was a proposal with all of the properties of South LA in this proposal. So who owns a 115th and Vermont? That was a question I asked 3 weeks ago. And if we can't get that answer, then I don't feel comfortable being in a circle knowing there's great minds right now on this Zoom call. And I can't even get a hello, how you doing? It's little things like that that our young people are looking at, and then we want to tell them, oh, we have programs for you, and yet these programs are archaic. These children are creatives. Everything has changed. It's digital now. We have to have our OGs learn even to have an email. Some of them don't even have an email, but they want to stand in the street and tell the young people, this is what, stop the guns, put the guns down, pull your pants up. They're not listening to us if we're not relative. So I would like for us to be clear on our levels of understanding. And I want to see a difference in South LA in particular. I'm very transparent on what we'd like to do. And if we're ready for that, on May 1st at Seabury Park, all of the homeless resources, there is not one homeless shelter in Compton. This is absurd. A city that started since 1888 doesn't have one homeless shelter. So that says a lot. So on May 1st at Seabury Park from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., I want all organizations, legal aid, blankets, socks, love, prayer, a microphone, speakers, food, from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. And everyone on this line know who I am. And I want you to show our homeless and our young people that you care. I'm running for a federal seat, and this is the first time I'm going to announce this. There is federal resources that are coming to the state of California and is being mishandled. So I don't care if you're a Republican, a Democrat, Black, Spanish, Asian, this is outrageous. And how the Black native of California is not being supported or respected. So I would like to have a resource for that. So thank you, Kimberly.
Yes, no, thank you for sharing not only about how communication is different based on the intersections of your identity, right? And how you, as a Black identified femme, experience challenges in your work and communication. And thank you for also lifting up your call to action. I would like you to please, Mello, drop the specifics of your call to action into the chat so that we can save that information, right? And folks can be prepared to activate and support you.
Absolutely.
Okay? And then also too, in regard to
I'll put in the flyer for May 1st, May Day, Seabreeze. Is there a way I can attach it to the chat?
There should be a file button, but if not, we can if you email it to Cheryl, we'll work with her to make sure that it gets emailed out to everybody. Okay.
Yes, we will. And we're going to get your answers, Mello. Thank you for your courage and accountability, call for accountability, call for action. We hear you, but we got to get through this time. So just allow me to be the sassy facilitator that I am today. But we hear you, Black woman. I hear you. We're going to get your answers.
Yes,
Thank you. All right, let's keep it. Mello shared. Who else may want to say something? And I'm going to pass it back to Cheryl. I just want to say I see your sassy hair and your glasses, and you're looking good, girl. On this Saturday. Yeah, I see you too.
Thank you. I don't know what happened, but I didn't get my email and when I forwarded it, but we'll discuss that later. I wanted to address Mello because I live in Torrance, but I work, and with staff and SMOT with Community Reflections. And one of the things that I'm seeing being done in the Harbor City area, Torrance, Redondo Beach, I have a really good friend, I can't remember her name right now, brain freeze, but she's doing great work with the homeless. And in the Harbor City, Long Beach, Wilmington area, there's a lot of homeless construction going on, and she's getting a lot of them housed. And I have to get some information from her to share with you because they're doing great things. And she's housing at least 3 people a week just off the street on the beach. And I mean, I want to know what she's doing and how she's getting it done. And we're not able to do the same thing because it's amazing the stuff she's doing.
Yeah, it can be done with volunteer construction. You have a lot of people who do construction, brothers and sisters looking for work, and even Winter, that specializes in women in construction, is there. The thing is, we have to really have these meetings where we say, this is where we want to build the housing. Like, for example, there's 2 empty lots on Rosecrans and Mayo, literally, that are perfect for building a shelter. And so this is what we're going to be meeting with the Chamber of Commerce next week. And I would love for everyone to be involved in it, because this is not about a me project. It's a community project. And if we can start that process, I would love to have that. The dates are there. And like I said, Seabury Park, May 1st is the first step of accountability of how we can work together.
I'd like to
This
get
is
some details
awesome.
from the that she's doing those mini homes that are in
Yeah.
those containers.
Yes.
Just great work. And she posts, at least twice a week, how many people, what person she found this week, how quickly she got them housed. And I'd like to get some details from her, or even have an introduction made to you, if that's.
We'll help you guys
I
facilitate
love
that.
it.
We're gonna help you guys facilitate the resource sharing and the connection. So I want to put this in context, this real life expressions, and how comfortable you both feel to share and then connect. The purpose of our meeting today, one of the next 4 series, is to lay out a framework. We want to show you what are all the parts to 25 people coming together to act collectively on a neighborhood, on an issue. So you're right in the space you need to be. It sounds like, along with what we already deal with, homelessness needs to be right at the top of the issue. And how do we get shovel ready, projects off the ground, get the right accountability. So I can meet you guys there. We can quickly do that. And remember, we have support from our county sponsors. They want us to create an agenda, a plan. So I'm taking very detailed notes, and we're recording and putting things in the chat. So the things that you mentioned won't be, they won't be forgotten, and it won't drag. And that's the reason we're doing recurring sessions, because we know all that's going to come up. So stay with me, and we want to get through. I want to kind of go a little bit deeper, and it's going to bring up some more comments, and get back to the radical professional team. So let's put a pin right there, and then I'm going to kick it back, but I'm making these notes. Thank you.
Yeah. So to me, like, I appreciate the open conversation. I want to be clear that our goal is to first ground you all in like shared language and rules of engagement, so that we can begin to get to those conversations. Like, what's happening in terms of accountability to how we support each other, what issues we need to activate on, and imagining, right, the best community results for our collective efforts. But first, before we get there, we do have to ground ourselves in shared rules of engagement. So I appreciate the call to urgency. I appreciate the robust discussion. It's very clear that homelessness and housing are 2 issues that we need to address once we begin to, again, ground ourselves in shared language. So thank you for that. That's powerful. Donna A., would you like to continue to the next slide, please? So your I statement is not about being polite, okay? It's not about softening your impact, right? It is about using effective language to get to the result, right? If you feel as if you're communicating in a way that like softens or doesn't allow you or silences you for your point, right? We want to continue to practice how we can sharpen for results, because that's not the intention, okay? So using an I statement acknowledges that the viewpoint is your own and not necessarily a fact about the situation. And again, we talked about it being a tool, right, to open a communication and diffuse kind of like what folks may be saying, okay? Or hearing rather. Next slide.
Sorry, I saw a raised hand by Crystal.
Yes, I just wanted to inquire. I know I've done a couple of trainings on the I statements, but for me, you can give me your professional opinion. Is it more important to when you voice the I statement to also have a follow-up request? You know, you can say, I don't like this, or I feel this way, but to me, it's just a statement of how you feel or statement of information until you put a request behind it. Is that something that you guys feel that most I should end in a request or have some type of way of getting someone else to not feel that you are judging or putting off your opinion on them, but coming to a mutual understanding of how you guys can work together?
Yes, indeed. You are on the nose, and we're actually going to get into that in just a second. Next slide, please. So with non-defensive communication, right, pointing a finger and using you, right, puts the blame on other people, like Crystal said, right? So automatically going to you, right, is the thing that automatically breaks down listening to people, okay? Next slide, please. So when we want to employ non-defensive communication, we want to do it when we need to confront others about their behaviors, when we feel others are not treating us right, when we feel defensive or angry, or when others are angry with us. Next slide, please. So, as Crystal pointed out, we are going to break down what it means to construct an I statement. Okay? I statements have 4 parts. Each part is stated in the following order, but can occur however you need them to. I can always look in several ways. When I think that I feel that I, my concern is. Next slide. Next, once you establish the I in your statement, you want to draw to what it is that you feel or you want, right? I feel unappreciated when I'm worried that something will go wrong if. My concern is that I get really anxious when, and so forth and so on. Next slide. After that, you want to speak specifically to the event that invoked your feelings, right? When I'm shouted at, when I'm sworn at, when I come to you as a legislator, as a Black femme leader, and tell you about issues related to my community, and you respond a certain way, right? So just being very clear about using the language that is diffusing and speaking specifically to the event that evoked your feelings or your call to like action and accountability. Next slide. And then be very clear what you need to see in terms of the results. I would like to, moving forward, when I, as a Black femme leader, address you in relation to issues of housing and homelessness, I expect for you as a public official to respond in a particular way, okay? Next slide. So again, putting it all together, here's an example. I feel very rushed when you come in late because I have to pay more money when I'm late picking up my child from daycare, right? It's very clear that you're invoking a feeling, right, that's causing an impact, right, that means that I am paying more money to accommodate your lateness, right, and also inconveniencing the daycare staff. So please, I'm making you aware of this so you can be mindful of being on time moving forward, okay? Next slide. Things we want to avoid. The phrases I feel that or I feel like are really expressions of thought, often opinion or judgment, right? And even though we may not intend them that way, the impact they might have on a listener is you coming to me after you had already formed your assessment about what happened, right? You're not giving me the chance to clarify from my perspective on the clock what time it is, okay? The use of I feel should always be followed by a feeling of sad, glad, afraid, so forth and so on. Something that centers in what's happening with you, and again, not assigning blame or meaning to the other party, okay? Next slide. Avoid accentuating your negative feelings, right? And this is hard depending on the topic, right? But again, we're trying to communicate for effective results, right? So we want to use language that is diffusing and not incendiary, right? So many people spend a lot of time focusing on communication on their negative feelings, right? It's equally important to talk about feelings of joy, happiness, relief, or allow folks to feel praise, right? So if there's room and capacity to do that within your communication, please consider that. Next slide. We also want you to avoid, again, downplaying the intensity of your feelings. And we talked about this. In no way should using effective language completely remove the urgency, right, or the impact needed. So we want to be mindful of speaking our truth, right, and also speaking it in a way that gets to results. Next slide. Awesome. So again, I know like for some of this is like, why, right, are we doing this? We know these things, but we either needed to introduce for those who do not know, or ground ourselves again in shared communication, right? And then one of the tools that we will be providing to you all is a concept sheet on the structure of a framework called Targeted Universalism, which Melo, I think, will be helpful for you in your work, right? Sometimes when we're going into the community to attempt to achieve a collective result, we have to be mindful, yes, first of acknowledging who we are going for, the folks at the margins, people who are experiencing houselessness and homelessness, right? But of course, the people within the system, right, set up, that are working exactly the way that they want them to, right? They're not going to be incentivized by like just doing the right thing. So we're going to, again, in relation to communication, give you a tool sheet on targeted universalism so that you can be very clear on your results and identifying specific language, right, that will diffuse people who may be on the outside of where you're trying to go by using language like, oh, okay, like everybody should have a safe home and feel welcome, right? Don't you want that? Okay, well then there shouldn't be homeless people, right? As opposed to like official, you are not being accountable to like your entire community population, especially those experiencing homelessness, okay? So again, we appreciate y'all. We're gonna continue with the series on communication. But again, we just want you to be mindful of just refreshing the tools that are going to help us continue our conversation once we get to uplifting the specific issues that we need to move to action around.
And I also wanted to add to that the way we communicate can also be seen as a strategy for what we want, right? The way that we communicate impacts, right? And so I know that right now it feels very individual, like making sure that we use I statements when I communicate to another individual, right? However, this is so important when we communicate with what I'm going to consider, right, a violent state, a violent government, right? Violent politicians, and their violence is shown when they're not hearing us, where they're not supporting us, right? Where they're not funneling the funds where they need to be, right? So this is almost a way of like, all right, we already know how you all are acting, right? On this side, though, I'm going to come clear with direct demands or actions, right? And so that is what we're trying to break down in a sense as well. But we have to practice that within ourselves first, right? Within our homes, within our relationships that we love, that we care about, right? Because that's how we practice using I statements. And I don't know if y'all know how to use the emojis on here or raise your hands or whatever. Like, how many of you use I statements? Like, I just want to know, right? Or at least you're trying to use more I statements, right? Yes. Okay.
If I could add, if you don't mind, it's funny because to me, like, communication is so cliche. I had a conversation the other day with someone regarding communication, and it's like, we all expect somebody to communicate, and we're not the best communicator. So I just wanted to uplift that and say, like, I put some notes in the chat when they were sharing the slides, and the last one I wanted to share was, I statements are a conversation opener, not the resolution. It's the opener to improving rather than deteriorating relationships. So if you take it from that standpoint, how we communicate will affect any relationship in any form or fashion at any level. So we always have to do our best to communicate. Thank you, Donna.
Cool.
You know, this is Glenn, Kevin Owens. I feel that where we at of this conversation today is you got to have both parties. I mean, having the knowledge of what effective communication is and listening. So if I got this tool, the other person I'm communicating with don't have this tool, we're gonna have an issue right there. But it comes back to me. Since I got the understanding of it, I know where to cut it off at, and I know where to lead it at to let them have they say so. And I'm walking away, you know, because I have to be the bigger person to understand this person know where I'm at and communicate. So me to say, like I say, when you got two fools arguing with somebody looking at don't know which one is the fool. You know what I mean? If we both arguing. So me having the knowledge of understanding the way I want to be communicated to, I'm gonna shut it down if I can't get the same. If I'm feeling this person is not listening and giving the same respect back, I'm gonna shut it down and I'm out of there. You know what I mean? I gotta find somebody that's gonna be on the same level as me to gain understanding instead of communicating to reply. I mean, you listen just to reply. I mean, it's going nowhere unless we're gonna sit there and get some effective communication going on and understanding going on through this communication. So it can work both ways, and I've seen it with our community, the way we things we go through, like with police brutality. We can see things happening to us, and we just, oh, this is not right. And then the moment we explode, oh, wait a minute, we got to go out there and listen to them. So sometimes, strategically, we got to another way of communicating with each other. But it got to be strategically where you got people together on the same message and stuff. Because when we do it individually, yelling, hollering, they gonna shut down. Like, ain't nobody listening, following them. Because if we just holler, yelling and communicate with them by ourselves and angry, that means nothing to them. They're not gonna move, push nothing. They want to see how many people you got behind you or with you. They're talking the same thing, and that's when you make them move and and do the things that the community is asking for. Can't be a one man or one woman show. We got to be a collective.
I agree, Kevin. I agree. And I rebuttal that because I know that's directed right here. I'm going to come see you later on today, if not by Monday. And I would like to have your business proposal and work with you because you're one of the few people that I do respect. And I want to be honest, you have done a lot of work and I want us to take it to the next level. So if I ask you for your telephone number, because for some reason I don't have it, I would like for you to text it to me. And that's what I think we're talking about is communication. So you literally are one of the few people I want to work with on a different capacity. By the lot across the street on Manchester, Vermont, it's been 3 years now, and it was supposed to be a school for low income or something for the kids in that area. And it looks like a third world country. So let's start with the stuff right in front of us. And then from there, we can expand because there are changes. And I think between the group here and a lot of people that haven't made it on the line is enough for us to actually make that change. Okay, so
my
that's
sister,
the branch.
Mello, this wasn't directed to you. This is directed to people in the field that I work in the dental world. That's what I'm talking about. It had nothing to do with you. And so let me be clear on my communication. It's just the people that I deal with on a day-to-day basis. That sometimes if I'm communicating, because I come from the gang culture. I was in a gang for like 40 years. And so when we go around to these different agencies talking about squashing beefs, this is what I run into with other individuals, and not where I'm at now, the forgiveness. Now I've been shot up by Latino gang members. My brother was killed by African American gang members. I had to settle my peace with them myself in order for me to show that forgiveness or to open up the door for so we can sit down and communicate. I had to struggle with myself, so that somebody can look at me and like, well, if I'm willing to forget to sit down to save somebody else's life, I had to like be a man of my word and show. Hold on, and show from. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
We
Yes.
can hear you.
And so I had to really listen to understand what people were saying to me as well as I wanted to see me. Because if we yelling at the table with each other when we trying to stop these gangs from shooting at each other, somebody had to have an open ear and open mind to listen. And most of the time when we talking with the other members that have been traumatized, nobody listening. They always want to be heard. And so that's why I'm not with no
Right,
way
I
talking.
agree.
Okay.
I agree with you on that. And that's why we have to build centers. People are violent because there's nothing to channel their energy in. If we have these liquor stores turn into studios, into creative labs, this is where the world is. At 3 o'clock in the morning, they're not going to be looking to kill each other. They'll be in the studio making money and learning how to be digitally responsible, because I'm literally learning this now. I'm an old school baby, but I'm transitioning because the young people are given nothing. So they don't have that mind of conflict resolution. How do I solve this problem? They just know how to pick up a gun, because in reality, their OGs, their parents are still banging. And I told you, Marcel is in jail right now because of his father's deeds. And he was one of the only Black youth from South LA that was trying to find business sense for his peers. But he was surrounded by gangbanging 24 hours, 7 days a week, to the day where it's trapping these kids. So there's a solution. Right now, let's turn another leaf and let's change our language, because this is a therapeutic right now, a lot of healing. And I really feel, because you guys are family to me, and I don't really say it as much, but now we have enough to work together to really make that change. And I think this is a season that is happening. So, kudos to Miss Cheryl. You've been there since day one, and it's really important that we move forward. So, like I said, I'll see you later. I'm going to stop talking.
It's okay. Thank you all. So I'm observing the complexities, right, that we encounter in our communities with each other, right? And so just to move it along with, like, it does tie into everything that you all have been naming. And also this unfairness, right, of how hard our communities always have to work, right, just to bring safety, health, education, right? So I just wanted to name that. Yes, it is unfair that you see other communities with full resources, and here we are just trying and trying over and over for years, right? Trying to at least get something in our community that could support, because we care so much about our communities, right? And so I wanted to go into like how we process and respond to new information, because it's sort of played out right now. And it's not to like shame or judge anybody, because literally we all have reactions to like every time we hear new information or something like that, right? And so these next slides, right, is about that. And so
I'm sorry, Donna.
Oh,
Before
yes.
we move forward, I see a hand from Crystal.
Okay.
Crystal?
For sure.
Oh, no, it's okay. I'm gonna let you move forward. I just want to say, I think that it's important for us, what you asked in the beginning of the conference is, what is that we want to see? What is that we want to gain? I think if we have a clear understanding of what the outcomes are, then we can find ways to work in that direction. As you mentioned, it's multi-generational, it's different communities, it's different interests of expertise at the table. So how is it that we can have one common ground or one common goal so that we can actually move forward? Because if not, I feel we're going to always have personal issues or always have different age brackets or different priorities. And that way we won't really be able to focus on something collectively. So I hope that one of the things that would be an outcome for this is that we create something that as a core, the I become a we. And that's something we can work on as a community, even though we all have individual intentions or things that we want to receive. So I know if not, this can be me personally. I don't have time to be on a call for personal things. So I'm mentioning you, Mello, because I know the last call that was the case. And it's not that it's not important, but that's not my concern. Then it could be like, I am not involved in the conversation. So I just want to make sure that we create some common language, some common goals that we all want to work on, so that when we have these conversations, it's moving in that direction.
Okay, so when's the invite? You have changes that was on 105th, 108th and Western, where our kids was waiting for Reginald Jones Sawyer. We applied for the BSCC grant and used your facility where we were actually set up, and Reginald Jones Sawyer never showed up for our kids, stood us up, and we were dancing. You remember that day? We applied and we never got that grant. Don't you know how much $1 million could have changed the lives of our kids that day? So personally, I would like to know, and I'm thanking you for mentioning this, I would like to know what your plan of action is. When are we going to work together? Because I reached out to you several times and actually used your facility with our kids where we were disrespected. So the floor is yours.
I wasn't speaking personally towards me, but what I was saying is your mention is homeless. And I noticed that's something that's close to heart to you. And I think that is something that's very important in the West Athens community. But I'm also aware that we have strategically designed areas of which we're going to approach, and homeless is not one of them. Now, does homeless tie into that? Yes. Is homeless something that's needed? But I'm saying is that we all prioritize. It might be particularly because in that particular time we had, but I don't want to spend the time speaking on me. I don't like that you like.
No, this is important because
you are trying to focus on you.
You are a big, no. You are a big member of this group. I tell you why. You have a nonprofit in the area that I live in. I live a few blocks away from you. So this is the platform where communication between, especially strong Black females like us, supposed to work together. And the divisive words that are used now is exactly what Kimberly was talking about, is that you have to have a plan of action first and have reached out and made a change in the community. I can tell you, and if you Google the work that we have done, we actually have our business proposal on Google that we submitted to LACD in 2013 for the Firehouse 23 in Skid Row. What I personally did, there was no grievance procedure in the homeless shelters. Did you know that? People were getting abused and there was no way for them to complain about. So I worked with HCID LA, I worked with the attorneys of VOA and Salvation Army, and we came to a consensus with Mr. Watts, who was the CEO of HCID at the time, and we actually drafted a grievance procedure with the county number on there, and the Board of Supervisors knew about that. So I'm saying this to say is that there is a way that we come together and that we actually have work done that says, let's come together, but you never reached out to me. It's divisive, and I would like that to stop. So after today,
I would like to
tell your plan, and let's see how we can work together, sis.
I wasn't
okay.
I'm sorry, but I would just would like to address this. I wasn't speaking on us creating a plan. I'm talking about us as a group in this phone, this conference, this workshop that we're establishing. But I also would like to say is that, yes, you did have something there. Changes did extend the invitation. It was open. It was never followed up, but that was not my accord. So I just would like for you to just when speaking, because
I don't know if Earl is online.
We appreciate.
Yes, I'm here. I haven't left the line. I am allowing for this to happen organically, because that's what happens, and that's why we're all here. We are the Radical Professionals, and we are the Community Action for Peace, community engagement. And we had an agenda and a plan, but some of this conversation is also important. So what matters to me is nothing illegal, unethical, or immoral, okay? And that hasn't happened yet. So what I'm asking of all of us, we're just stay present. We're not going to let anything go off the tracks. I will assure you all of that. It won't go off the tracks. But I think both Mello and Christo, I hear you both. And so remember this perspective principle that we're honing in on. It's that perspective. It's all existing here together. So it's comfortable being uncomfortable together. And I just want to assure you, we're going to get there. And mostly we're going to get there because of the inputs, and the inputs are you both. So that's an assurance. That's what guides me. For the rest of you that are rolling your eyes at me, that's what guides me to kind of let some of this happen. So let's pull it back, because we're at 10:30 and we don't want to waste anyone's time, and neither do we want to minimize anybody's reality right here in the moment. So we're all working together to hold all this. It's enough room. We're going to get a bigger plate. We're going to open up the airwaves, right? It's enough room for us all to make it happen. So please be assured, I have everybody's notes, and we're gonna address it. What we're asking is to stay the course with us, okay? We got 3 more sessions to go, and we're right on point, okay? So I'm gonna pitch it back to the Radical Professionals and let them go in, but I've been making as authentic and accurate notes in the chat as I possibly can. And thank you, Crystal and Mello, because how I hear it, I hear trust. Because it takes trust to get up on a Saturday morning, show up, and then risk, saying what's really on your mind the way you both just did in front of all of us. So I just want to call that out. That was not like they're reminding us of some practicing skills. You guys didn't say anything bad to each other. You didn't, and that takes trust. So I just want to say, from where we started 5 years ago, we're in the 5th year. So now this is right about that time. Remember I said when a baby is a baby, it's so cute and sweet, and we give it everything. And about the time they're 5 or 6, they start thinking on their own, spitting and kicking and pushing back. That's all that's happening, but we love them anyway. We don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. So just keep that in mind. Don't sacrifice or, minimize any of your feelings or thoughts. All I ask is, like we say in a good old-fashioned AA meeting, just don't leave before the miracle happens, okay? So stay with us, I'm gonna kick it back over to Kimberly or Donna E.
I'll say something. I appreciate it, Cheryl. Thank you for slowing us down and regrounding us. I actually wanted to take the moment. I have like 3 or 4 things to say. I appreciate all y'all, but y'all sharing a lot of information, and it's overloading me, but overloading me in a good way, because 1 is bringing me up to speed, and 2, you're providing a lot of context for me to, as a facilitator, to see how I can support and guide you all's learning. And so the first thing that comes to mind is I'm sporadic, so work with me. Crystal was identifying moving from the personal to the collective, and moving from the personal to the collective does not take away from the personal goal at all. And one thing I want to uplift is that I did hear that, like, we can still get to that personal goal as a collective, but the collective goal may be something else, and that personal goal may still fit in that collective goal, but it may not seem like a priority because it isn't, right? The overall goal is, but it doesn't mean we're not going to get to that personal goal. So I appreciate that. And then I'm also realizing that through the multiple conversations that are happening, Ms. Williams said it in the beginning, that multiple truths can exist at once. So I'm sitting here eating this up like, okay, this is dope. This is, and the layers, and the layers that are happening, that are coming up for me, that are being said. Another point I wanted to make was, like, Kevin, I appreciate what I heard come from you as well. Sorry, I ended up starting to take notes because I was like, I'm gonna forget everything. Communication, I felt like what you were saying necessarily wasn't giving up in communication, right? Because sometimes in leadership, I like to share that when you're skilled, and Ms. Williams has supported me through this process, when you're skilled and you have the, for lack of better words, upper hand in conversation, meaning you're more skilled to have the conversation, to hold space for the conversation, I know how difficult it could be to continue a conversation when you're like, anybody in the community, no matter who it is just not getting it, right? You're like, I'm just going to exit now because I'm skilled to exit now. But what came up for me is like the understanding of, man, how do I reapproach this conversation using a different tactic, right? Because I'm not giving up on anybody, right? It's just not the moment for them to understand where I'm coming from. I'm skilled enough to understand where they're coming from. So let me take a step back. Let me come back at a later date and revisit the conversation in a different way. So I really appreciate that. And then Mello, I appreciate you as well, because I hear fire. I hear like, yo, we not moving fast enough. And if we ain't moving fast enough, like it's not happening, and I'm trying, right? And then that's also supporting my understanding on where you are in the movement or the work, and how is it can like we as a collective get people where you are, and not only where you are, how as a collective can we slow down and get everybody on the same page, right? While still understanding moving from the personal to the collective, while we're still trying to approach the conversation in different ways so people could get it. So I wanted to just stop and slow us down because I hear everything that's going on in an amazing way. And I just want to reframe and say what we're trying to do is just make sure we give y'all the tools and skills needed right now to effectively communicate with each other in the shared space, so that every one of us on this call today can move forward tomorrow and go knock on that elected official's door, right? Because Mello, I hear you, and a lot of things start jogging my mind about the homeless issues. And when I was the president of the Zapata King Neighborhood Council in the 9th District, over there off Maine by I forget what was it? Avalon Carver Center, where we used to meet, and the community members that had houses used to talk about the homeless issues there. And I used to have to slow them down and be like, look, y'all privileged enough to be in the house, but we don't understand how many of these people probably had houses near you that got kicked out, that are living on the street where they used to live, right? And so trying to find that balance and have that communication with a lot of folks is very difficult for me as a young Black man from South Central LA that experienced homelessness firsthand itself, right? And trying to communicate that to folks that are more privileged with housing and jobs to understand where these folks are coming from. Like, they just not homeless to be homeless, right? There's layers to that as well. Just trying to provide that context. People just wouldn't get it. And I'm still wondering where the dollars are going from elected officials as well to house folks, right? And why is it so slow? And I will agree that homelessness is $1 billion industry, but it's going somewhere, but it ain't going to housing folks, right? And so how do we work as a collective to figure out the oversight needed to make sure those dollars go to actual building of houses, right? And I think there's a lot to learn on policy as well, because I heard like land use, planning and land use, like why is this vacant lot there and it's outsourced to LLCs? Like I just want to let you all know I hear everything that's going on, and I appreciate the conversation, and it's going to actually help us inform how we move forward, because we didn't have this context coming in, right? So I really want to say, like, I appreciate everything that I'm hearing, and I appreciate the respect and the conversation that I'm hearing too. And it reminds me of myself and how I communicate. So people of color is having a conversation. It looked like we fighting, but we ain't. We just talking, and I love it. So I'm here for it. And thank you all for just giving me the moment to just share out my thought process and what I'm hearing. And Donna, if you would like to pick up.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. So I know that our next session will be speaking on intersectionality, and that's what I'm observing now, is that we're all very much, we could be like, look, I'm all about education. I'm all about intervening within the community around gang violence. I'm all about houselessness, right? Homelessness, and how all of these paths are on one highway together, right? And so intersectionality is something that we will be naming and going over in the next session. So just something to look forward to as well. And again, like Daniel said, we're hearing y'all, we're taking notes. So then the next session that we're here together, we're also more relatable with what you all are saying as well, okay? So thank you all for trusting us as well, because I know this is the first time that y'all are meeting us. right? And I know it could feel a little off. It's like, well, you all are new. Who are you, right? And so again, just thank you all for trusting this process with us. So I'm going to go back to where we were at around how do we respond to new information, right? And so again, I'll raise my hand for this, but sometimes I always want to be right, right? And so in this image right here, one person sees a 6, the other person sees a 9. And actually it's the same thing, right? And so it's going back to everything that we've been naming around the clock, that many truths can exist at the same time. However, we're like, I see this and I have to be right, right? Where does this come from, right? So let's break this down, right? When our sense of self depends on being right, information from opposing viewpoints is often seen as a threat. We have a whole body reaction to it, right? Instead of being able to listen and respond thoughtfully, we automatically react. We become reactionary. These reactions fall under the same trauma response categories used when psychologists talk about how humans respond to different threats. So some of you have most likely heard this, right? You're in the fight, the flight, the freeze, and the fawn mode, right? So let's break this down. What does this mean, right? So here I have this amazing like pie chart that breaks it down on how we perceive each other, how you perceive yourself, or maybe you've been labeled these things, right? Based on the trauma responses. And I'm going to give credit right here to Ryan, the holistic health coach, right? And so what we have first, right? I'm going to look on the left under flight, right? Maybe you're a workaholic, or maybe you're labeled as a workaholic. Maybe you're an overthinker. Maybe you have anxiety, you have panic. Maybe you've been labeled as OCD. Maybe you have difficulty sitting still. Maybe you're a perfectionist, right? So when you are receiving new information and you're responding to it and you see yourself in this category, you're in the flight, right? Let's see what the fight is, right? Anger outbursts, controlling. You're labeled as quote unquote the bully. Maybe you're labeled as a narcissist, or maybe you view yourself as that, right? Maybe you have explosive behaviors, right? This is the fight response. Let's go to the freeze, right? And how it shows up. You have difficulty making decisions, right? You feel stuck. There's dissociation. There's maybe you isolate yourself from others. And then this feeling of this numbness, right? And then the last one is fawn. And if you fall into this category, you're seen as a people pleaser, or maybe this is something you need to do in order to respond to that trauma, right? You have a lack of identity. Maybe you have no boundaries. And this means like you're always saying yes to everything. And you're not saying no and be like, oh, wait a minute. I think I said 50 yeses this week, and now I feel really overwhelmed, right? And then the last one is codependent, right? So I'm going to pause there and see if my other facilitators want to add anything around the trauma responses.
Yeah, I do want to highlight that sometimes, we may see ourselves, or we may be labeled like we're always in one particular part of the pie. We might always be the flight person or the fight person, but that's not necessarily true. Like, we are all impacted by trauma as people of color. The systems that we abide with were not made for us. So it's perfectly normal for us to move in between these different areas of the pie, depending on the situation that we're confronted with.
Thank you. So moving forward, right, I want to introduce that at times when we hear new information, we see it as a threat, right? This is called threat-based mindset. So if you are in these categories, the fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, this is how you most likely respond, right? When somebody says something new to you, or like tells you something about, you had a belief about something, they're like, actually, it's actually this, right? If you're in the fight, you're like, you are wrong, I'm right, right? If you're in the flight, you're like, let's talk about something else, because I don't want to talk about this, right? The freeze, you're just like, and you don't want to talk, you stop listening, right? You're just quiet. And then the fawn is your performative surface level engagement. So you're kind of like, okay, let me just do this work. Let's have a surface relationship. I don't really need to get into it with you, or even know about your, you as a person, right? So you're just kind of fawning. It's like everything's surface, but that's not authentic, right? So again, take a moment and just kind of reflect. It's like, whenever I receive new information, what type of like mindset am I in, right? Am I the fight, the flight, the freeze, the fawn, right? And again, it could change from maybe person to person or from the information that you're receiving. So what we want to encourage you all to do, right, is to have a learning mindset instead, right? So right here in this picture, you're seeing like responding to new information as an opportunity to learn, always as an opportunity to learn. Even though you're like, I kind of disagree with you, I don't know, this is really hard for me, always listen, learn, do something, an action, and speak, right? And so you see all the squiggly lines are going everywhere because this is how you expand your learning mindset, right? So a learning mindset, or as we're going to talk more about it, growth mindset, seeks opportunities to learn and grow. It values capacity to learn, reflect, respond thoughtfully, and change one's mind when new information shifts old beliefs. I know sometimes when we're like, dang, I was wrong, we put ourselves down a lot, right? Or we put each other down, like, yep, you were wrong. And instead of just like, yo, you know what? We were just on the different ends of the spectrum. We had to talk it out. Now there's middle ground. We're good. Like, we can move forward, right? And that is always, always the solution or the end goal that should be when we're talking about organizing efforts, when we're talking to each other, right? And so I just wanted to end with that piece, and then I'm going to pass it over to Claudia, because then Claudia is going to go more in depth around what is growth mindset and a fixed mindset. Okay, so just give me a second while I go to the next slide real quick.
I'll just add what came up for me in the moment was in regards to learning new information. How do we respond to feedback? You know, because a lot of times feedback could be new information for us. And I pictured myself freezing. I'm not gonna even lie, 'cause I know sometimes it may seem as if I'm rejecting or being defensive, but sometimes me freezing is just trying to figure out like, oh, this is deep, right? And try not to have that negative mindset because I've probably already been hard on myself before I received this feedback.
Thank you, Daniel. And I think going along with that, how we approach these situations, right, or like what frame of mind we're in, it really affects our ability to hear each other as well. So I want us to center on how mindset matters. The way we think about our abilities and our potential has a profound impact on our behavior. It also impacts our relationship with success and failure and our emotions. And all of these have place for us. And I think in this conversation, my own growth mindset has been challenged. So I also want to be transparent, right? As facilitators, we often come in with a fixed mindset of how a conversation might go or how we might get into each topic that we think we're going to talk about. But in seeing y'all just engage like with each other and having a passionate conversation and really trusting us to just be yourselves and let us jump right in, right into this cohort, into this group, that also like helped my own growth mindset. And we'll talk about the growth mindset. So when we're talking about the growth mindset, right, another word that we might think of might be open mind, right? The growth mindset basically says and conceives a challenge and a failure as an opportunity for growth. Whereas a fixed mindset or a single mind, right, focuses more on a single truth. And that assumes that our character, our intelligence, our creativity, they just stay the same. They can't be changed. And when there's success, this becomes proof for us that yes, things are the way I always thought because we experience success in that way. So it's important to know that we don't constantly stay in one mindset, right? Just like Danae was talking about how we can move from one response to trauma to another when we're taking in information, the same thing goes for when we're confronted with something that challenges us, right? So a growth mindset creates a passion for learning. A growth mindset frees you from worrying about proving how smart you are and allows you to explore new paths and ideas without the fear of failure. In a growth mindset, positive, healthy relationships are about learning and growing together, being open and honest about each other's strengths and challenges, and working together to make the relationship stronger. Again, with a focus and an outcome in mind. A fixed mindset creates a hunger for approval. A fixed mindset views learning as an opportunity to demonstrate intelligence. A challenging project or a bad grade becomes a reflection of deficiency or kind of a negative thought and challenges your sense of self. A fixed mindset leads to avoidance of risk taking in general. And in a fixed mindset, conflict is seen as a character flaw, right? It's our brain is kind of like, I can't deal with this. Um, in a fixed mindset, relationships should be easy, and if they take effort, they're not worth it. This is something that can be challenging for us to assimilate. So I like to take a moment to kind of think of a situation or situations where we might show either a fixed or growth mindset. And I'll invite our facilitators as well if they'd like to share an example.
Sure. I can share an example, if I may. So, doing this work, I used to think organizing. So, I was young. I was very inspired by the Rodney King riots. I was probably like 4 years old. Don't ask me how I was inspired by that by 4 years old, but those images during the riots in the 90s have never left my mind. And somehow I understood that it would take being on the ground to make change. Little did I know now at 33, it's more of a process of just being on the front lines. All right. But I'm naming that because I really thought that it was being on the front lines was just it, right? And the only way to do it was just to show up on the ground, knock on the door of the elected officials, or just, do what they were doing in the 90s, which was taking out their rage in various ways, right? So I grew up with that mindset of saying like, hey, I want to be an organizer. I want to be on the ground because that's the way I make change, right? Little did I know, years later, Daniel at the age of like 25 would, in my current day, I actually get to train the future leaders of tomorrow today, meaning that I get to help the growth and development of young people or emerging leaders from South Central Los Angeles to not have to necessarily be on the front lines as the only tactic or strategy, but actually do a lot of work behind the scenes. They don't have to be seen. They could be the ones that's organizing or putting together the idea, right? Or they could be the ones inspiring the next generation to be on the front line, or to be the elected officials, or the ones to encourage the next leaders to create the new strategies, right? And I'm naming that because today I am still here, sharing space with my colleagues and training folks on make it relevant to today, skills and effective communication, right? And so I appreciate that, because at first I just thought there was one way to get things done that's organized on the ground. I didn't know that there was a plethora of roles I could play, or a plethora of roles I can train folks to. So that was my example of moving from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset.
Thank you, Daniel. And also what we'd like to do now is go ahead and share a video to kind of illustrate, because we acknowledge that folks learn differently, taking information differently. And also so y'all can get a break of hearing our voices too.
Thank you. So let me just cue up the sound and the videos. Let's do this.
And appreciating everyone also who's been reflecting in the chat. Thank you.
Okay.
We see you.
Share computer sound. Share. Okay, cool. You all hear this?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Here are two seeds, both planted on the same day, in the same soil, in the same garden bed. One is very curious, full of life, and ready to grow as tall as it can. The other is filled with fear. What if the sun is too strong and burns my leaves once I grow, it thinks. Or what if a beast eats my tender sprouts? No way, not a chance I am leaving my shell. So, it remains still and stagnant, rigid in its place. The brave seed feels the heat of the sun above and starts to push hard out of its shell. Sure, it has doubts about reaching the outside world, but its curiosity is stronger than anything. I want to see all the living creatures of this garden, it thinks. I can't wait to feel the morning dewdrops on my leaves. The little seed keeps pushing until a single sprout comes out. It grows and grows through sunny, warm days. It even grows through colder, stormy days, because the brave seed knows that the sun will always return. Throughout life, you will have moments when you feel like either one of these seeds. The way we see the world around us and how we behave towards life is called our mindset. You can choose to have a fixed mindset or to have a growth mindset. When you have a fixed mindset, things can seem too hard. Negative thoughts might cloud your mind and you start to give up easily. I can't do this. You may believe that if you are not good at something, then you never will be. I'm just born this way. The obstacles you face can hold you back, and you begin avoiding challenges. What's the point of trying? Just like the fearful seed. However, you can always choose to have a growth mindset. A growth mindset helps you believe that your goals are within reach with effort and perseverance. Life is a great big adventure. It shows you that failure is a normal part of your journey. The obstacles you encounter will only make you stronger. Challenges and mistakes help me learn. You'll enjoy the challenges you face and become more resilient. I want to become my best self, just like the brave seed. Fear is a natural emotion. We all experience it, and it can make changing your mindset difficult. The important thing is to try. So here are some tips to switch on your growth mindset. Perfection does not exist. Aiming for perfection is like running a race without a finishing line. Trying to achieve it will only exhaust you. When negative thoughts fill your head, you can turn them around by simply adding "yet" at the end. See challenges as adventures. They will make you more resilient and can open new worlds. If you work hard, you will see progress. And don't worry about mistakes. They are a part of life, and we can learn from them. The good news is the sun always comes out after a storm. By having a growth mindset, you might even find that a little rain won't bother you much at all.
Thank you, Danae. And at this point, after watching the little video, we purposely show things that you'd be able to use in the future with people of all ages and things like that, because we like to provide these type of resources. So I want to ask, and yes, we prioritize the chat, but if you'd like to speak, maybe we can take one person, because I know we're keeping on a timeline here of like any reflections that you might have related to the video or the growth mindset, how this applies in your work, in your life.
Absolutely. I love the cartoon, first of all, because it's very easy to follow. But one thing I took away from that is the challenges you turn into adventures. And that is so important. And now to reflect, and I know I speak a little rough, and I do want to apologize for that. I'm not usually like this. I am I am usually a fun person. I just lost myself for a minute, but right now, a growth mindset is exactly what I think drives the tone, I guess, of how I drive things. But behind the purpose, it's really about growing together. And I'm very serious about that. So I will do whatever I can to start with myself first before I even, you know, constructive criticism can always be taken the wrong way. And I want to change the dialogue. So growing in that sense of changing how it comes out is the challenge that I put for myself to start off with. So that is an awesome cartoon. So thank you for showing that.
Thank you. And I just wanted to add, don't ever apologize for being your authentic self. Sorry, I have a dry throat. Don't ever apologize for being your authentic self, because in every space, we should be able to show up in our silliness, in our rage, in our boredom, like all of these emotions, because that's what makes us human, right? And so processing through it is part of it, right? Together, right? Just naming like, look, this is where I was heated, but now I'm okay, right? And so I wanted to name that this is where I was at and now I'm here. And this is like the fluidity of all our emotions constantly, right? And so thank you for saying that and naming it. And we really appreciate you and everybody else in the here.
No, thank you guys. I learned a lot today. Appreciate it.
Yes, and I like to say, I like dealing with people living in their truth. You know, because when you can't be who you are authentically, you never find out who the person is truly. You know, it's just like the people that I work with. I use everybody's strengths and I use their weakness, and how to bring that camaraderie together to accomplish the mission we're trying to go after. It's just like playing football, sports game. Everybody not at the same level. They don't have the same talent. Some are weak and strong than others. But how do we get all that together to accomplish the goal we're trying to get? And that's just like the New England Patriots. I mean, the philosophy they had set in place, they didn't have the best players at all positions, but they won multiple Super Bowls. So it's like, how do we get all that to come together to accomplish the goals we're trying to accomplish? You know, because we got to use your strength. Melo, don't like you said, we need that. Because when we had to go talk to some people, we know who to send. Melo, go down that one. You know what I mean? We go to another department, we send this other person to deal with them, so we can use all our strengths and our weaknesses to accomplish what we want.
Yes, and yes. The type of work that y'all are doing, that we are doing, it's challenging. And it takes a lot of energy, and it takes us being able to shift from one space to another, like Kevin named, like being able to operate under different systems. So this is just a tool to help us be able to do that code switching that we all as people of color have made forced to do, right? Um, Thank you, Donna. I think you have one more slide left for us. So now we're just going to wrap up the growth mindset piece and summarize. Yes, thank you all for sharing your valuable insights. All right, so how do I develop a growth mindset? First thing, take a few risks and don't hide them. So instead of trying to save face, let yourself mess up now and then and trust that it gets easier. Let go of the image. Upholding an image of effortless perfection is exhausting. Our work is hard enough. Embrace yourself as a growing, learning being and share that new perception with others. And we're seeing this played live and in action. So I'm grateful for that. Embrace the power of yet. Let not yet become your guide. Whenever you're struggling with a task, pause and remind yourself that you haven't mastered it yet. And make a new goal for every goal accomplished. Aced the midterm, finished a 5K, got an initiative pass, set a new goal to keep yourself stimulated.
I'm sorry, I got like real triggered positively on the last one. The last I had it the last slide. Let me go back to it. It says make a new goal for every goal accomplished. I don't know. For some reason I was thinking about organizing and how we do this work and how we train each other and everybody on this conversation. I'm thinking like the most radical thing we could do is continue to train people to take our jobs, train somebody to take that person's job, train somebody to take that person's job, meaning like that cycle has to continue because the structures that we're trying to go up against or challenge, they already have that set out for themselves. And as a community, we necessarily don't think with that mindset, right? I'm thinking Daniel needs to do the work. Daniel needs to do all the work. Daniel gonna challenge everybody, right? But really, I need to train the next Daniel, and I need to train, and then that Daniel needs to train the next Daniel after that, so that there could be this continuous cycle of the movement continuing to happen, right? I don't need to stay in a position of power all the time, and I don't need to hold all the power, right? I need to make sure I'm passing on the opportunity, and I really want to uplift what I was just listening to you, Mello, because actually, when I was thinking about that for myself, I was thinking about how you are naming the creative arts, how you are naming like sinners, right? The world today is moving towards tech, like, and so I appreciate that mindset because I'm also realizing that there needs to be the gap needs to be bridged between like the youth and the older folks, right? And some older folks might not realize like it's about tech right now. And I think that was named, right? Like folks don't even have the email, but they may be on the ground. So how is the youth connecting with the older folks to support them in creating that email? And how are the older folks saying, this is how we used to do it. I need y'all to be able to step up and do it this way or do it better. Here, let me lay out the foundation. Because obviously it didn't work for us where I'm at. So it's up to y'all to be innovative and seek that change. So yeah, I just wanted to say that because that's what I thought when it was like make a new goal for every goal accomplished. I'm like, what does that look like? And so thank you, Claudia.
Very insightful. Thank you for that, Daniel. You hit the nail on the head, very much so. So I appreciate you very much for that comment.
Excuse the police behind me. I don't know if y'all used to that. I am. Don't judge me. And so last but not least, sad to say, we're going to have to close out sooner or later. Not right now at this very moment, but we want to take the opportunity to make sure we get some insight on what folks may have learned or what they were able to put in practice. I feel like I've seen a lot put into practice today without folks even knowing they was putting it into practice, which is beautiful as always. But yes, we want to hear from you all and know, what did you learn today with our time together? And you can either utilize the chat or of course you can unmute yourself. I'm an interactive person. I would love it if you just unmute yourself so we can hear your voice, but that is solely up to you all.
Well, I think I'll just round it off since I've talked a lot. I just want to say I really do appreciate this specific. It's like therapy, like none other, and it truly means a lot to me. I admire each and every one of you. Been watching each and every one of you. Some of you that I do know. I want to continue for us to, as I say, take it to the next level. But I haven't been great on expressing exactly where I came from and my background and the traumas because I try to live it through action. And so I'm not a great communicator. And that's one of the things that I hope to grow with you guys on how to do that. I really just speak the language of the streets and I don't want to mince that. So when you see me at an event or if I reach out to you, it's because I generally respect what you do and I want us to take it to the next level. The other side is that the reception, because as I said before, we are not exactly a welcoming people and for good reason. You know, you want to protect your area. A lot of people haven't left LA. So we have like a certain state of
Mello, you muted yourself on accident, I believe.
sorry. And I see that all of us really have the same sentiment when it comes to focusing on the youth and justice prevention. Speaking on that, my background specifically is policy, and I focus on changing laws, connecting our youth with the Constitution, because the way it's written right now, it literally is giving permission to continue to discriminate against Blacks. And this is a language with reparations. It could be a whole, a whole different topic. But the point is, it's about leveling the playing field for my people. I didn't ask to be born in this skin. It comes with challenges, but those challenges don't define who I am as a Black woman. I literally want to change that narrative of how we really need to be equal behind the scenes. And I guess as we unpeel the onions, that we make those changes. But ultimately, my goal is to really change laws. And I can't do it without the collective body of you, your input, and our children's input, so that we can actually have a new constitution and have a Black woman who is a Supreme Court justice, so that really what it's all about. So that's it. And that's all. I love you guys. And just last thing, I want to, my condolences. My sister actually passed away on Tuesday. She was taking the vaccine, Moderna, and she was scheduled for it. Her name is Midwin Charles. So I'm trying to not divulge in too much into that because this is something that is, it just happened on Tuesday. So I just want to say, please keep me in prayer. Midwin Charles, the family in prayer. She was a correspondent for CNN and she was breaking a lot of news. I am Haitian nationality wise, so Haitian American is my background, but I am American, so to speak. So I want to really see a different America for my children's sake. So please just keep me and my family in prayer at this time. Thank you.
Sorry for your loss, and thank you for sharing your personal story, and thank you for sharing back on what you learned and some next steps you have. I want to take the time and note that you said therapeutic a few times and healing a few times, and I want us to all realize, like, we have to find support in each other to continuously do this work. I know I do it with the team all the time, or we do it all together all the time, because healing doesn't just happen when we step away from the work. It has to happen while we're also doing the work. And I too, I was just born with the color of my skin, and I love it too, but I'm realizing I gotta figure out healing within it all the time. And that is work too, right? I always gotta work and I always gotta do healing work. And I'm like, I'm just worked out, you know what I mean? But I just wanted to name that because sometimes we do just need to step away to take our time to heal. And so, and I appreciate what I heard, because I think a lot of times folks just think we just have to talk, right? And be listened to, when really it takes us as a collective to come together, talk, listen to each other, hold ourselves accountable, and then continue to move forward together to do the work, right? That's clearly different than just, like I heard Kev mention earlier, like some people just want us to show up because they want to listen to us, right? And then they don't take that action that I hear Mello saying, right? Mello's all about action, like we need them to work. And Kev is like, I'm trying to get people to work too, but we're knocking on doors. They're telling us they just want to hear us out. Like that's so yes. I appreciate everything I'm hearing. Anyone else, what have you learned today?
Well, I learned that I'm not crazy. You know what I mean? So the things that I do, I practice a lot of this stuff we learned today, you know, so it's always good to like the reassurance, you know, to know that that we on the right path, you know. So we gonna stumble and run across days to where we just not hearing and feeling it, you know what I mean? But it's just not giving up. It's like coming back, you know, and that's what I try to like, you know, I try to tell my staff when we dealing with people and they tell you like, no, you can't do that. Okay, let's come back. I don't like to just leave that out there. Let's come back and find out, okay, what can we do then? You know, so if this thing is about we can't do it that way, well, how can we get it accomplished then? So I'm always telling my staff that I don't ever give up. Because if they didn't accept it at this moment, what do I need to do for them to accept it the next time I come back? And the third time, the fourth time, the fifth time, the sixth time, the seventh time, whatever it makes takes, you know, I'm gonna get it, you know, what I want, you know, but I just gotta make sure it's lining up for the needs that they're looking for. I think we get frustrated sometimes on our journey on we trying to accomplish things. And for some, it comes sooner. And some becomes long. It's a long wait, you know. But I think when you got the same people with the same common goals, and we just use our strengths, you know what I mean, at different times. You know, if it ain't for me to go in there and have this conversation, well, it might be somebody else at this table to go and relay what we're trying to get across. You know, so it's just supporting each other and using each other's strengths to accomplish what we're trying to get, you know, for our people and the move this work forward. But this is a good start. And I think this is something that we need to learn at an early age. If we're not getting it at home, how to effectively communicate with each other, I think it eliminates a whole lot of stuff, you know, violence in the home, violence in the school, violence in the streets, you know, and to come to other peaceful resolutions and stuff. Because them just the necessary tools that anybody's supposed to have, any household or any individual should have growing up in the household, even before they even go to school. And when you go to school, these should be always tools that we should be learning. Is this right here? It's communicating with each other because that's what we fall short of. I just thank for sharing, you know, because spending a Saturday with everybody. I mean, it says a lot for us to get on a Saturday morning and have this conversation and have a training like this. Because I love training the trainers. You know, we train each other and learning from one another.
Thank you. I appreciate that as well. What sparked for me in your share out, Kevin, is sometimes like folks don't even know what they want. You know what I mean? We're conversing with folks, we engage in the community, and sometimes we kind of, you know, either been down that road or we see the things that folks need, but sometimes we ask folks in simple communication, like, what do you want? And it's gonna take them a minute to even tell you what they want, because they don't even know. Nobody even asked them that. You know what I mean? And then sometimes we're doing the work and we're engaging folks, and then folks think they're on the path, or even I think I'm on the path, right? I think I know what I want, and then boom, I was like, this whole time, that's not even what it was, right? It's actually this, and I can move towards that. And through conversation, we can now work towards a new goal where we all have a shared understanding, right? So I also appreciate that, again, uplifting, like not giving up. I can literally sit here and say I'm one that don't give up on people, and I'm learning how to take a pause currently on people because I just won't give up. And I'm like, this is not healthy for me, right? And so taking a pause, I believe, is okay. And then re-engaging folks when I have the time while I'm healing, so I can continue the movement work. Is there anyone else that would like to just share out what they learned today?
I would share that what I learned is something, what I would like to say is that I learned that what we're doing for the community also helps us as individuals and helps us in our day-to-day life. The information about how we are stuck to things we believe in, or we are steadfast in what we want or what we know and not open for other information to be introduced to us. That's something that, for me personally, I know I try and use this information in my day-to-day life, how I see things, how I see people. And I'm just happy that this is something that we can continuously grow on and that we're all working together. But most importantly, I'm just happy that we're in a training, that we're able to come together as a community, and that we're still working on common goals in our own indifferences in the world that we have today. So I just want to thank you guys for being here with us, and I look forward to this group growing and we can get the message out so that more people can be a part of it.